And a little bit about me and myself while I'm here and speaking about artificial intelligence. Even though I haven't written in my entire professional life a single line of code. And when you ask me what is my background, I always say my background is economics and philosophy, but I will tell you that I'm a storyteller. And when I start to tell the story about artificial intelligence or generative AI, I always like to start at the beginning and ask myself, actually, where are we coming from and where are we going? And this leads me to the question, what makes us special or unique in this world? And there are a lot of things that make us special. It's not the ability to use tools. This is kind of like other animals can do this as well. But it's our ability to plan, develop, and manufacture ever more complex tools. And this idea of tool making is basically what we call technology. And I've said already, my background is economics and philosophy, and in economics we care especially about one kind of technology, and this is what we call a general purpose technology. And a general purpose technology is a technology that has the ability to drastically change the entire economy, but also the way how we live together. And if we look at our very short human history, we will realize that most of these kinds of technologies that we have developed have always helped us to augment our physical strengths. To give you an example, here, for instance, is the plow, which completely changed the way how we can do agriculture and live together. Or another example of a general purpose technology is the printing press, which changed the way how we can copy and store information and led to an age of enlightenment here in Europe, or especially here in Munich, the car, which completely transformed the way how we move from A to B. And it's very shortly, less than 100 years, that we not only can augment our physical capabilities, but also our cognitive capabilities with the advent of, obviously, computers and artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence is not really a new term. We talk about it since 1956, when these 7 guys very enthusiastically came together and thought they could basically spend a summer in hard coding the way how we humans think and learn. And they had to realize it was actually not so easy, and it took quite some while to really have this big breakthroughs in artificial intelligence. And I wanted to tell you the story because I wanted to tell you the story of, for me, the really big, kind of like this really big breakthrough when it came to an AI and started the age of artificial intelligence was when a company called DeepMind was building an algorithm that was able to beat the world reigning champion in Go. And Go is considered to be one of the most difficult games for a computer to master because you have more potential states than there are atoms in the universe. And for this, we always thought we needed something like human intuition. And then this company came along in 2017 and built an algorithm that was able to do this. And I want to show you a small outtake of the second game of Go, where they showed they said for the first time that the computer showed something like creativity. And here it goes.
Lycée Dal go to smoke, and AlphaGo just to play. It don't think about the openness will be there or not. So Ajab sees AlphaGo plays the move 37, and Ajab puts the stone in the board.
와, 정말 생각지도 못한.
Value.
That's a very surprising move.
I thought it was a mistake.
When I see this move, for me it's just the big shock. What? Normally human will never play this one because it's bad. It's just bad. We don't know why. It's bad.
But it's a little bit high.
Yeah.
It's 5th line. Normally you don't make a shoulder hit on the 5th line.
So coming on top of a 4th line stone is really unusual.
Yeah, that's an exciting move. I think we've seen an original move here. That's the kind of move that you play Go for.
Hey.
Interesting stuff.
This 5th line shoulder hit was,
I wasn't expecting that. I don't really know if it's a good or bad move at this point.
The professional commentators almost unanimously said that not a single human player would have chosen move 37. So I actually had to poke around in AlphaGo to see what AlphaGo thought. And AlphaGo actually agreed with that assessment. AlphaGo said there was a 1 in 10,000 probability that move 37 would have been played by a human player. So it knew that this was an extremely unlikely move. It went beyond its human guide, and it came up with something new and creative and different.
So, and it turned out that this move 37 was actually the game deciding move. And as I already said, I like to show the scene because for me, this started really the age of artificial intelligence. It also shows very nicely how the boundaries of what we believe that only humans can do and machines can do are constantly shifting. But also, especially today, I wanted to show the scene because without this move and without this company, OpenAI wouldn't be there. And I tell you in a second why. But one thing is definitely true when we talk about AI being the new electricity, and just as electricity transformed almost everything 100 years ago, we can expect the same thing to happen. And that means ever since this quote exists already before ChatGPT, and I think ever since ChatGPT came out, we know that this is already the reality. We just need to look at the last shareholder conference of Google. There was only one topic.
AI, generative AI, generative AI, generative AI, AI is AI, AI. It uses AI to bring AI.
So, and this really created a hype. You could also see it in my course. So I'm teaching here at the Technical University of Munich, a course called AI for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. It's about the management of artificial intelligence, so about AI strategy, how to build AI startups, and how to generate value with artificial intelligence. This was before ChatGPT with 40 students. After ChatGPT, so 1 year later after it came out, this is how the lecture looked. I had over 1,046 students. So who am I? My name is Tristan. I'm an AI strategist, public speaker, an expert when it comes to the management of artificial intelligence. I'm a faculty member for GenAI and AI at BCG. I'm, as I said, lecturer at the Technical University of Munich and the Munich Business School. I used to build up one of the largest startup incubators for the Schwarz Foundation in Heilbronn. And yeah, I'm very happy to talk a little bit about kind of like my insights or things that I'm seeing in the field of GenAI, and hopefully can bust some myths along the way. But I always like to keep things very interactive, so I want to get a little bit of a better feeling for the crowd that we have here, and therefore I prepared some Slidos. So please take out your phone and scan this the link. This will help me to better see where you're standing and where actually where you're from. Okay, it seems like almost everyone. Someone's still scanning. Perfect. So, what is your background? Is it working or not? Yeah, no, perfect, I see. Media, co-founder, telecom, sales, requirement engineers. Very, very mixed crowd, software development, online marketing, AI startup, consulting, computer science, co-founder. Seems like there are a lot of people there from the startup fair that is just at backstage today here, which is very, very nice. Next question is, how would you judge your GenAI know-how? Advanced, not surprising. I thought so when I'm here at the GenAI Wednesday. Couple of beginners, couple of experts. Normally, I'm quite often I do a lot of intros on artificial intelligence, and I'm happy that this time I leave the intro to AI at home and can go a little bit deeper into the topics. But what I wanted to start with was a very short history of artificial intelligence, or GenAI, and how we come to it. I mean, as I said, we have been speaking about artificial intelligence since the 1956, and back then when we were doing artificial intelligence, it was from the 50s until the 80s, mainly rule-based programming that we had, and then somewhere in the 90s came along machine learning. And then we had from, I think, 2010, we started with kind of like seeing the first deep learning algorithms being very, very good. Among them also what we have seen, AlphaGo of DeepMind. And then now since 2020, we are speaking about generative AI. Generative AI is much more than text. It's a lot of things, text, audio, images, 3D. But I think it's very interesting to think a little bit about kind of like the story behind generative AI. Because always when I ask this, well, what is artificial intelligence the same as intelligence? And understanding that this is actually not the same is quite important to understand why we are having generative AI at the moment. And to answer this question, artificial intelligence is not the same as intelligence, because would you make this mistake? Probably not. Or I show you another example. So here, a camera has been used at a football pitch that uses basically AI to follow the ball. But unfortunately, it confuses all the time the bald head of the referee with the ball. It's probably also not a mistake that you would make. Or sometimes it's very hard for AI to do things that for us are actually very simple, as for instance, recognizing if we have here fried chicken or a poodle. So therefore, it's very important to differentiate between two types of artificial intelligence. So we have narrow artificial intelligence. So this is AI that is very good at solving very specific tasks, so sometimes even much better as we humans. An example for this would be a spam filter or self-driving cars. And this is completely different than artificial general intelligence, and this is very much intelligence like we have it. So for instance, I could invite you to my place. You would have probably never been there, would be able to go to the kitchen and make yourself a cup of coffee. That doesn't work in the world of AI yet. So I can't take the best algorithm in playing Go and put it in the car and expect it to drive a car. So this means everything we're seeing in the world of artificial intelligence for now falls along the domain into artificial narrow intelligence. However, the goal of these companies we are speaking now today is to develop actually artificial general intelligence. So the company DeepMind, this is the Demis Hassabis, this is the founder of the company that got acquired by Google very early on, Google DeepMind, and they said from the beginning, our goal is to develop artificial general intelligence. And another person who invested and was the first investors in DeepMind, who knows it? Who was one of the first investors in DeepMind before Google? Yes, exactly. Was Elon Musk. And it's very interesting what he then, even though he bought this company, he said about this company. And here it goes.
Google acquired DeepMind several years ago. DeepMind operates as a semi-independent subsidiary of Google. The thing that makes DeepMind unique is that DeepMind is absolutely focused on creating digital superintelligence, an AI that is vastly smarter than any human on Earth and ultimately smarter than all humans on Earth combined. The DeepMind system can win at any game. It can already beat all the original Atari games. It is superhuman. It plays the games at super speed in less than a minute. DeepMind's AI has administrator-level access to Google's servers to optimize energy usage at the data centers. However, this could be an unintentional Trojan horse. DeepMind has to have complete control of the data centers, so with a little software update, that AI could take complete control of the whole Google system, which means they can do anything. They can look at all your data, you can do anything. We're rapidly headed towards digital superintelligence that far exceeds any human. I think it's very obvious.
So Elon Musk is talking about super artificial intelligence, and why I'm putting this here, so it's an AI that is vastly smarter than all of us together. And in order to get there, you have to go through this first, and we believe it will take a very short step, or some people believe it will take a very short step to go from general AI to super AI, but this is another topic. However, we know because he was afraid and he actually was used to be a good friend of with the CEO of Google, but they had an agreement not only about, I think he slept with the wife of the CEO of Google, but they also had a disagreement of about DeepMind and how to keep it safe and how they should do it. And because they had kind of like the fight around it, he decided to take his own money and actually found OpenAI, a company that also would work on artificial general intelligence, but actually be open and for the society, because he didn't want one single company to have this. So, and this is why now Elon Musk is a little bit pissed, because it's not as open as it seemed anymore, what we're having now with OpenAI. Nevertheless, they have been able to build, to do something very, very amazing, and they have been able to build ChatGPT. Bill Gates thinks this is probably one of the most important innovations right now, at least it's one of the most talked about innovations right now. And it looks like, at least this is what they always say, that they have been quite close, at least the closest to actually achieving artificial general intelligence. And if you have been following the news, they say now that they're kind of like on the next level, that they have AI that can maybe reason at a PhD level. We have to see if reasoning at the PhD level actually gets you anything done or not. But this is something different. But yeah, he says about himself, ChatGPT is not artificial general intelligence yet. He says ChatGPT is incredibly limited, but will give you a good enough impression about being very, very good. And as we can see, it was actually quite often used. It has become the fastest application to get 1 million followers, users in 5 days, and one of the fastest applications to get 1 million users in less than 2 months. There was only one application that was faster. Anyone who knows which application it was? Wild guess? Taking them now? Yeah, good. Some gaming application. Pokemon Go, exactly. Thank you. So, but what we have to understand, why do these language models seem so good? Because language in itself is a general purpose technology. We can describe everything that we're doing in language, and this is why they seem so incredibly good, these language models, even though they don't have a real understanding of language. And what has happened now is, maybe you have seen kind of like this graph before. What can we see now with generative AI? I mean, the internet has given us kind of like reduced the marginal cost of distribution. Cloud has reduced the marginal cost of storage. And AI, or generative AI, is now reducing the marginal cost of generation. I mean, I have been telling you we're talking about AI already much longer than GenAI. So why is GenAI seemingly so much better? And the reason for it is we have so much more data for generative AI, because it's based on our language, because the internet is full of language. So there are a lot of data on which I can train this model to. And what I find also very interesting is GenAI also means there is going to be some kind of paradigm shift, how we can write and code in the future. Because if you think about it, at the end of the day, what is happening is always we are switching some zeros to ones in binary code, and then we had basically have written programming languages to facilitate or make the switching of these binary codes easier. And now what happens with kind of like generative AI, for the first time, I can use my own language to speak kind of like to these applications. And this is gonna get just more extreme and more extreme. And they say already now the most important coding language that you will have to learn in the future will be English. And let's see about this. So, but what I find is very interesting about this is kind of like how this has impacted the people. And I think what we can see already is there are like two very interesting trends I want to talk a little bit about. Like we see kind of like how generative AI has impacted us top down, and how it's basically impacting us bottom up. And when I see something like this, AI won't replace humans, but humans with AI will replace humans without AI. I'm very much thinking about how these tools can impact or empower us really from a bottom-up approach. And I think it's very interesting to see that AI is not taking any jobs. And one reason for this at the moment is because we're talking about narrow AI, and every job is comprised of a lot of different various tasks, and AI can take over some of them. So it's not AI against humans, but our future has to be from a bottom-up approach. Every one of us has to think, how can AI help me in my daily work? And that AI is taking over actually tasks and not taking over jobs is something you can see here. This is a study that has been done, I think, with BCG consultants. And you see kind of like for certain tasks, there's a group that was allowed to use ChatGPT and another group not to allow to use ChatGPT. And while brainstorming and rough drafting has been going down, editing actually has been going up. So I think it's very interesting to see how different tasks are actually getting impacted. And we can see basically how ChatGPT has helped us really much to improve the productivity of the individuals. And I find it's very interesting to see, I speak to a lot of companies, how they kind of like say always that, well, we want to improve productivity, but then at the same time, they don't really want to think, or I often stringent enough, so I ask them, well, do you have ChatGPT Enterprise? Do you empower your people with AI? And they say, well, all the people are coming with their own solution. And I think it's very interesting because we have for the first time something that we can call the tool professionals, that the people come bottom up, bring their own tools and do with their own tools do their work. But this can create a risk for the companies because I don't have a control anymore over what the people are actually typing into these language models. And this is one challenge. So I wanted to know from you, how often do you use actually ChatGPT in your kind of like work life and so on? Daily? Very good. Most of you daily. So we see we have here a very biased group compared to what we see in the standard. So let's just keep in memory, daily here we have 60%. Let's see how we're doing compared to the average. We are faring much better than even the global average, which is at 70%. We're somewhere here at 60%. So very good job, very kind of like distinguished crowd that we have. But the main question remains, is now we talked a little bit about AI, generative AI, and the history of generative AI. The real question is, how can we actually deliver value with artificial intelligence, be it generative AI or not? Right? So the question is how to deliver value with AI. Because how does it work? I mean, for me, it's very simple. It always works more or less like this. We have data that goes into a model, then we have AI in the middle, and it does a prediction. So let's take the example, what we wanted to do here. For instance, we want to train a machine learning model that is able to read handwritten numbers for postal things, and instead of hard coding the rules, we train actually an algorithm on a lot of training data and say what we want to get out of it. So the model can learn the rules, the underlying rules for itself, and based on those rules, can then decide if the number that we're seeing is actually a 1 or a 7. This is more or less how this would look. And what I have to ask yourself, what is the value of a solution like this? So what is the value of an algorithm that can predict what handwritten number you have? And I say, there's no value. There's no value until we are able to make it trigger an action, until we can use this and implement it in a product. And now what it can basically do is, for example, help us sort emails. Or sort letters or mails that are coming in. And this is basically how something like this would look. And you see that AI is somewhere here. There's a small camera where AI is integrated that reads the handwritten postal code, and then based on the postal code decides where to put it. And you see that AI is often the smallest part in each of the projects, and you need much, much more. And only if you can trigger actions, then you have value. And this is also the challenge if we go into the real world, because there is a big paradox when we want to apply AI versus what we are the expectations that are often driven by research or by the news. And then when we want to use it in practice or put it into practice, the reality looks much, much different. And I mean, I'm coming also partly from academia, and this is kind of like, if we kind of like differentiate these parts, is exactly the reason why. Because this is the research part. People only care about what they can do with AI and what can they predict. But if you want to put it in practice, you have to think about how can I link the predictions with actions. So what we have in research, the research tells us AI can now better detect prostate cancer on MRI than radiologists, and then the news tells us radiologists going to be obsolete. But then I tell them, because I worked in a radiology AI startup, well, this is actually not true, because what you have to do is completely different. You have to think about how you bring this in the workflow of the radiologist. And this is a completely different task, and reminds me a little bit about this, where in 2015 Elon Musk said we will have self-driving cars in 2 years. Then we have radiologists being obsolete in 5 years, and now we have radiologists in regular cars driving to work. Right? So what we're seeing is actually, when we think about what does it take to really drive value with AI, we see that AI sometimes, or quite often, is the smallest part where the AI model sits in a technical product or technical environment, be it hardware, software, or both. And this in itself has to sit in an operational environment. And just to make it a little bit clear, so what I'm saying is kind of like the value of an algorithm that can predict if kind of like a transaction, a banking transaction, was kind of like a little bit different, has no value unless I can put it in a product where now the customer can use this information to decide actually was the transaction fraudulent or not fraudulent. And also when it comes to judging these AI algorithms or the AI Act, we're not looking at the AI, we're looking actually at the action that it is triggering. So let's look at this, for example. Here we have an AI or a model facial recognition that can predict if this you or not. Who of you would like if we use this for mass surveillance on Marienplatz? No hand is going up. Who of you would be okay if your son or your daughter is getting lost at Oktoberfest and we use this technology to find them in the crowds? Who would be then okay? Yeah, much more people are lifting their hand. So it's not the AI that we have to evaluate, it's the actions, what we're doing with this. So in order to understand a little bit more, kind of like going now a little bit deeper into the GenAI value chain to understand what business models are around there and how companies are actually trying to deliver value with AI. So what we're seeing here, if when we're talking about the AI value chain, I always say, okay, well, what we have that is going throughout all of this and important is we have an infrastructure and talent layer that is comprised of data. So we need data to train the models, computing power. We need more and more computing power. And the race for GenAI is very much a race for computing power. That is why everyone who bought NVIDIA a year or 2 years ago can now pat themselves on the shoulder. Don't see much patting, so maybe... And obviously expertise, so people who can build those things. And then on top of this, we have this core AI technology layer. So there is, for instance, OpenAI with their GPT-4 and maybe soon GPT-5. There is something like Aleph Alpha with their model Luminous. There is the Gemini of Google and so on. Then we have an AI development enablement layer, so things that makes it for us very easy to develop AI. And then we have an application layer where companies really build or use all of this to really solve real problems, right? And there's something very crucial missing to this AI value chain that is often overlooked, and this is the end user. And why is often overlooked? Because the end user, if the end user doesn't buy the stuff, well, there is no value and there's no sustainable value. Because only if we have an end user there, the value goes up because he's the one who's actually wanting this and paying all of this, and the cash flow goes down. And something I talk a lot about is the idea of how can you create value and how can you capture value. And the challenge is that we are seeing right now is most of the startups or companies that are working here are often financed by external money. So most of those companies are not able to provide long-term sustainable value. And I tell you that probably 70 to 80 companies that are, or startups that work in the field of AI that are now founded with external money because they're not able to create those value yet, will probably not exist in the next 10 years, and we will see much of a consolidation in the field. But actually, this is the most important part. And our goal should be to empower, and this in Germany is the Mittelstand, are the companies, to empower them. And if you look at statistics, actually, last year, the spending for software as a service actually decreased of those companies. And if we can't get those end users to understand the value of AI or wanting to use the AI, this whole value chain is going to collapse. Because at the end of the day, Sam Altman said it, only the thing that matters is...
it wasn't the underlying model that mattered, it was the usability of it.
Right, so the usability, the value it provides. So let's look a little bit how OpenAI is actually delivering value. And I think it's very interesting. They have 3 different business models, how they're making money. So completely completely different than Jonas Antrulis, who was on, I think, BBC and said OpenAI doesn't have a business model and they're not making profits. I see it completely different. I think they have, at the moment, the best business model for generative AI. So they have, on the one hand side, how they're making money with the industry partnerships, the big ones, with Microsoft and Apple, that pay them a lot of money in order to be able to use these GPT-4 and build them into the products in the new Siri or the Copilot that then provides value to their end users, makes them money, and this money goes back to OpenAI. Or they have this AI development platform, which makes it very easy for companies to access their API, so startups can build awesome tools for their end users, and this is how they get money. And the third layer that they have is, and this is probably the most important layer for them, is something that's tailored directly to the end users, and this is ChatGPT. And why is ChatGPT so important for them to have a tool that is directly at the end users? Because it will help them to generate a lot of data and understand how people want to use their tool. And this kind of like will create a virtuous cycle of AI, where they have more data, they will be able, because of this, to build better algorithms and a better user experience, because ChatGPT, as we learned, is not just the AI, but the kind of like this whole environment that people want to use. This is able then to provide better services, such as the agents. And because of this, they get more usage and more data. But in reality, it's actually a two kind of like line. We have kind of like AI can help us to improve existing products, or maybe even bring out completely new products that we haven't thought of. This means if we look kind of like at the world of AI, we have to go away from kind of like this was traditional, what we have, and we go to AI, we go from code to data, and data is becoming more and more important. So if you're just thinking about what happens before advanced models, before LLMs, it was very much the models that kind of like decided what should be your competitive advantage. So we have two companies working on the same type of data set, and depending on the capabilities, the models themselves they built, they would kind of like provide a different value add, versus you have now any company with the same data set can now use kind of like these off-the-shelf models, and now it's becoming more difficult to differentiate what is actually the value and how are the values different. Because this is something we see, right? Before, what we had, if the data is varied, the model is varied, the results are varied. When we have the same data, varied models is still varied. And now in the world of with ChatGPT and large language models, it is so much more dependent on actually the data that I'm getting. So data is becoming more important, and we see much more this shift from model-centric, because I don't have to build these models anymore by myself, but I can use the models, to a much more data-centric world. So this brings me to the last, hopefully last point. Let's see, but I'm still good in the time. How to apply generative AI. And here I want to ask you a question again. What do you think are the challenges when we come to AI? Data privacy, GPUs, intelligent human quarter, quality of own data, information, ignorance. Okay, all valid points. Let's talk a little bit about how we can think about applying artificial intelligence. And when we're talking about applying AI, we can think about applying it in our offerings or applying it in our processes. When we apply it in our offerings, we have either products or services. A lot of companies have actually both. And here AI can help us to enhance existing products and services, or create completely new products or services. So some of the, especially when we're seeing it quite a lot now, that all the companies are using AI or trying to include AI to improve their existing products. I think in some it makes a lot of sense, in others doesn't make so much sense. So I think, for instance, in toothbrushes, using AI probably doesn't make so much sense. I have now a lot of friends who have gotten children, and the new age of these baby phones actually include AI, and they can detect if a child is also lying on the belly and how good it sleeps. And every one of my friends has actually these AI-enabled baby phones. So there are some features where AI makes sense and others doesn't make so much sense. And then when we go into processes, we have to think, or I like to differentiate between three different processes. We have universal processes, industry and function-specific processes, and organizational-specific processes. So universal processes are processes that everyone is doing, like writing emails, writing text, scheduling meetings, industry and function specific. So if you do HR in company A and go to HR company B, it's going to be very similar. Or in the industry, if your processes in a hospital, among hospitals are very similar. And then you have processes that just your organization has and no one else. And if you think as an organization, well, how should I apply AI then? And where should I make or buy? This can be very helpful. Because if we go from the left to the right, what we see here we have a big market because everyone has the problem. And if we go to something very organizational specific, well, there are not a lot of people that will have the problem. So it makes a lot of sense to build something yourself, because they're most likely, for startups, it's not going to be too interesting, because if I'm going to be here on the right edge, what I need kind of like a lot of customer input and a lot of customization need. And that means I need a lot of customization versus standardization, and there's no good product. This means the reason is, I always say, for instance, if you are a BMW and you have a limited team of people, it doesn't probably make a lot of sense, or I would think twice if it really makes sense to build your own in-house tool for marketing or for HR. But here it might make more sense to look actually if there's something on the market. So if we think about how can we kind of like use this to think about how we create value, I mean, it's very simple. So everything we have in the offerings should ultimately really help us to increase revenues. And I think it's very interesting. Here's an example of something I gave to my mom for her for Christmas. It's a bird feeder, and there are two versions of it. So it sends you a picture or video of a bird when it comes, and there's a version without AI, and there's a version with AI that can also tell you which bird there is. And you see how they're charging actually a different price and making this product more interesting. Versus if I'm actually going into my processes, it should really help me to reduce cost and increase the quality of the things. And one excellent example is this company, and Financial, how they do it. The process is called, so they're among others, so the thing that I'm talking about, they provide you with capital, so they're a lending provider. They have a slogan, it's called 310. So it takes 3 minutes for application, 1 second to approve, and no human is involved. I, 2 years ago, tried to get a credit for my startup, and it took me over 3 months. And just think about it, they are able, so they are in China, to via more credits than any of the other biggest banks together. And they can, because there's no human involved, they are faster, and they can also provide them at a cheaper price point. And just think about it, because of this, they have become one of the most valuable companies. And compared to, for instance, the Bank of China, Ant Group has, I think, now roughly 10,000 employees. Bank of China has 100,000 employees. Ant Group has no really kind of like no physical bank, and Bank of China, I think, has something like 10,000. So see, you can imagine how the new kind of AI companies can outcompete everyone on cost. So, and I think this is very interesting. If you look at this, and what this means is, well, here we again have the idea, how can we apply AI to create value and to extract value, kind of like by making our products more valuable, our services more valuable, but at the same time to differentiate cost so we can actually gain a bigger profit. And this should be at the goal at the end of the day, how you basically can do this or should do this. And I think it's very interesting, because this is going to be the big task, because if you, for instance, if you ask Sam Altman how are going to be the industry looking like, or the companies of the future, this is what he's saying.
I think there will be a one-person, $1 billion company soon. Because you'll just have like AI doing so much of the work in ways that are difficult to imagine today.
So he says there's going to be probably a 1 billion one-person company. And this is not possible for all the companies. But just think about what this means and how the companies of the future are going to look like. And now I tell you, the real kind of like hope for AI in Germany, out of this reason, is not churning out a new AI startup, but is actually thinking about how can we bring our economy and our existing economy, which is not very good at the moment, get them to really use AI, because now we are somewhere at 20% of usage, to really drive value and be competitive. Because how should a, I don't know, Volksbank-Kasse compete with Ant Financial in the future when we have them here, right? So we really have to think how we can empower the existing companies, because something for me is sure, AI won't replace organizations, but organizations that know how to use artificial intelligence will replace organizations that don't know how to use it. And I think I was allowed 45 minutes. I still have 5 minutes to talk, and I'm going to talk 5 minutes more. So how can we think now about the use of AI? I mean, we have seen kind of like this really high inflated expectation around generative AI, very much kind of like exaggerated expectation. I was last year in December, I was in a panel with 100 CIOs in the crowd. And I asked them, who of you is using generative AI? And everyone, I think everyone, maybe not 5 people were lifting their hand. And I was asking them, well, who of you actually can generate value with those models? And then I think 2 people lifted their hand. So you see kind of like the challenge is going to be, how can we develop value? And quite often it goes kind of like back to really thinking a lot of kind of like business-like and trying to figure out what are the valuable use cases that are realistic now that I can build now. What happened with generative AI, when we think about what are the use cases we want to build, we put in here the cost, how costly is it to build and maintain those things, and we see, okay, well, these kind of like use cases here are kind of like the raw positivist AI use cases, and I should focus on them. Sounds very simple. Is not really what is happening in the real world. I see tons of use cases being developed where I can tell you in the beginning that there is no value. For instance, I work with the city of Munich. I do the strategy for the city of Munich, and they have in their roadmap, I think, a use case for libraries that if you return your book, they tell you what book is very similar. And I can tell you, like, probably is not the most valuable use case to put a team with 3 people on. So what happened now with generative AI? I mean, now it got mainly a lot more cheaper to do a lot of those things, and a lot of more use cases are now feasible. So our big challenge is to figure out, well, what are the feasible use cases that can do with GenAI? And sorry for this, my designer got the colors mixed up, so this should be actually green and not red. So if you think about what are kind of like use cases that we should consider or make a lot of sense, I mean, these are the use cases where the generation effort for us human is very high, but the validation effort to kind of validate if kind of like the solution is correct is relatively easy. And these are kind of like the GenAI use cases that I find very interesting, and there are a couple of them. What else I find interesting is kind of like the discussion. When I said at the beginning, we see now the rise of the tool professionals. So a lot of people are actually bringing their own generative AI models, their own ChatGPT to work with this. And even if it's forbidden, the people tend to do this. So I was working with the military, and we did a workshop on kind of like AI for innovation, and it was very interesting because the people just brought in their own computers, their private computers with OpenAI on it or things, and used them privately. So you have to understand, this is going to be a big question. How are we going to use these language models in the future? Because if you as an employer don't give a clear guideline, the people will use them anyhow, and then you can't control it at all. So what is going to happen in the future, we're all going to have, in my opinion, our own customized models that really can work on the know-how of the company. I mean, if you think about it, with these large language models, we are yet able to achieve amazing results if we know how to prompt well. We can achieve even better results if we're using things like RAG and so on. But if we really want to kind of like customize, if with the know-how that we have, we really need to start thinking about how to train or every company train their own model. And this is going to be the future, in my opinion. So they are not only based on language and know-how, but in the future we have generic knowledge systems like maybe ChatGPT that has the knowledge of the internet. And then you bring your internal knowledge, IP, data, understanding for processes, and you onboard them to really have these super system knowledge systems, or kind of like your own company agents. And in the future, I believe that each company has their own chatbot, and I also believe that each employee has their own chatbot or language assistant, and that we're going to be in a future where everyone has the agents. And I think this is the cool thing about generative AI, because it can give everyone a language now. If you think about it, what does this mean for a company? Well, a company can now speak to you on their own behalf with a generative model. We see this now with animals, that we're trying to give animals a voice with generative AI. But think about what we can do. We can give unanimated things, we can suddenly speak with them. You could, for instance, I know someone who has built a tool for his plant where it has a sensor, and the plant is all the time insulting him that he's not giving enough water. So before you could never talk to a plant, now he can kind of like talk to his plant, or at least the plant can talk to him. Think about if we put this technology into parks or somewhere in the English garden, and it tells you it's not only perceiving, but actually taking action. So it's maybe in the future we're going to have the English garden going to have his own agent or large language model, which realizes when it's dirty and actively requests that it will be cleaned up. And what is very important when we're thinking about the future of those actions is to understand how much of those actions we want to give away or how much we want to do ourselves. So if we are ready to fully delegate it to AI, or is AI only decision support? And I think very much what we're going to see in the future is thinking about how much control we want to actually give to AI.